The story opens with Dr. Owen Reyes walking through the detention levels of Concordia Station, reviewing case files for the Interspecies Legal Aid Society. Most cases are minor: visa disputes, contract disagreements, cultural misunderstandings. But today's file stops him cold. Subject 7429K, female Calthier, age 42 cycles, approximately 36 human years, charged with biological non-fulfillment. Sentence: execution by void exposure in 72 hours. Owen reads the case details with growing horror. In Calthier society, reproduction is not just biological imperative but legal obligation. By age 40 cycles, all individuals are expected to have produced offspring. Failure to do so, absent approved medical exemption, is classified as biological treason, willful refusal to contribute to species continuation. The sentence is death, carried out efficiently and without ceremony. Subject 7429K's real name is Myra. She was brought to Concordia Station as part of a cultural exchange program, and when her home government discovered she'd reached 42 cycles without children and without approved exemption, they demanded her immediate return for sentencing. Concordia Station's administration, bound by extradition treaties, complied. She's been in detention for 2 weeks, awaiting the Calthier enforcement ship that will take her home to die. Owen requests access to meet with Myra, ostensibly to ensure her rights under interspecies law are being observed. When he enters the detention cell, he finds a woman sitting with the stillness of someone who has already accepted her fate. Her skin has the grayish pallor of prolonged stress, her long ears droop with resignation, and her amber eyes are empty of hope. "I am Dr. Owen Reyes with the Interspecies Legal Aid Society," he introduces himself. "I'm here to review your case and ensure your legal rights are being observed." Myra looks at him with something between confusion and exhaustion. "I have no legal rights. I failed my biological obligation. The sentence is prescribed by law. There is nothing to review." Owen sits across from her. "You have rights under Concordia Station's charter regardless of your home government's laws. And I'd like to understand your situation before accepting that there's nothing that can be done." Over the next hour, Myra tells her story with the flat affect of someone recounting facts about a stranger. She wanted children. She tried for years. But Calthier fertility is complex, influenced by stress hormones and social factors, and Myra's career as a xenobiologist kept her in high-pressure environments that suppressed her reproductive capacity. By the time she realized the problem, she was past the age where intervention was likely to succeed. She applied for medical exemption but was denied. The review board determined her infertility was situationally induced rather than genuinely physiological, meaning she could have had children if she'd made different career choices. Therefore, her childlessness was classified as willful non-fulfillment. "I do not blame them," Myra says quietly. "Our species has low birth rates. Every individual who can reproduce must, or we risk population decline. I understand the logic, I accept the consequence. But you didn't choose to be infertile," Owen protests. "You tried. You wanted children. Intention is not outcome," Myra replies with the weariness of someone who has had this argument with herself countless times. "I failed. The law is clear. I accept what I am, a failure who no longer serves purpose." Owen looks at this woman who has been taught that her worth is measured solely by reproductive output, who has internalized the judgment that she deserves to die and makes a decision that will upend his life. "I don't accept that, and I'm going to fight this." Owen throws himself into legal research with desperate intensity. He searches for precedents, loopholes, anything that might prevent Myra's extradition. Concordia Station's charter guarantees the right to seek asylum from unjust prosecution. The question is whether Calthier's execution for reproductive failure qualifies as unjust, or if it's simply a cultural practice other species must respect. Owen argues before the station's judicial board that sentencing someone to death for biological circumstances they couldn't control violates fundamental sentient rights. The Calthier Diplomatic Corps counters that their reproductive laws are necessary for species survival, and that interference in internal Calthier law constitutes cultural imperialism. The board is split. The decision comes down to a technicality. If Myra formally requests asylum and renounces Calthier citizenship, she can remain on Concordia Station. But this means permanent exile. She could never return home, would lose all family connections, would be considered legally dead to her own species. Owen presents this option to Myra, expecting relief. Instead, she's conflicted. If I request asylum, I become a traitor. I confirm everything the law says about me, that I chose myself over my species. You'd be choosing to live, Owen says firmly. That's not treason, that's survival. But why? Myra asks with genuine confusion. Why do you care if I live or die? I am worthless by my species measure. I failed my purpose. You have no obligation to me, no benefit from saving me. Why expend this effort for someone who deserves death? Owen's response is immediate and passionate. No one deserves death for being unable to have children. No one's worth is measured solely by reproduction. You're a person, a xenobiologist who contributed to cross-species understanding, someone with thoughts and feelings and value beyond your biological function. The fact that your society forgot that doesn't make it true. Myra stares at him like he's speaking a language she doesn't understand. My society did not forget. This has always been our law. For millennia, we have prioritized species survival over individual preservation. It has kept us viable as a population. At what cost? Owen asks. How many people like you has your society killed? How many contributions to science, art, culture were lost because someone couldn't have children? He leans forward. I'm not saying your species doesn't face real challenges with low birth rates, but solving that by executing people who are already here, who already have value, who could still contribute in countless other ways, that's not species preservation. That's just cruelty with a bureaucratic justification. For the first time, something flickers in Myra's empty eyes, not quite hope, but perhaps the possibility that her internalized acceptance of worthlessness might be wrong. If I request asylum, what happens then? Then you stay here, Owen says. You'd be under Concordia Station's jurisdiction. You couldn't return to Kelthir space, but you'd be alive. You could continue your research, rebuild your life, exist as something other than a failure awaiting execution. Myra is quiet for a long time. They will call me a coward. They will say I confirmed my unworthiness by choosing exile over accepting just punishment. Let them, Owen says gently. You'll be alive to hear it. That's what matters. 2 days before the Kelthir enforcement ship arrives, Myra makes her choice. With Owen standing beside her, she formally requests asylum and renounces her Kelthir citizenship. The judicial board, bound by charter provisions, grants the asylum. She is free, but at the cost of everything she was. The Kelthir diplomatic corps is furious. They accuse Owen of interfering in internal Kelthir affairs, of enabling a criminal to escape justice. They demand Concordia Station reconsider the asylum decision. When the station administration refuses, the Kelthir threaten to withdraw from several cooperative programs. Owen faces professional consequences. His supervisor at the Legal Aid Society reprimands him for creating an interstellar diplomatic incident. Some colleagues argue he should have respected Kelthir sovereignty rather than imposing human values on another culture. But Owen stands firm. There are some laws so fundamentally unjust that respecting them becomes complicity. Executing someone for being unable to have children crosses that line. Meanwhile, Myra struggles to adapt to her new reality. She's alive, but she's also completely adrift. She's been taught her entire life that her value derived from reproduction, and now she must build an identity from nothing. She moves into temporary housing on the station, tries to return to her research, but suffers from severe depression and trauma. Owen checks on her regularly, helping her navigate the asylum process, connecting her with xenopsychologists who specialize in cultural transition. Slowly through these visits, a genuine friendship develops. Myra begins to articulate feelings she'd never been allowed to express, the grief of wanting children and being unable to have them, the pain of being deemed worthless by her own society, the disorienting experience of surviving when she'd accepted death. Owen listens without judgment, sharing his own experiences with feeling inadequate, with questioning his purpose. One evening, during one of their conversations, Myra asks him directly, "Why did you fight so hard for me? You say I have value, but what value do I have? I failed my species' most fundamental expectation. I contributed nothing that will outlast me. What makes my life worth saving?" Owen's answer is careful and honest. Because you're a person, and people have inherent worth regardless of what they produce or create. Because you're capable of joy and suffering, of growth and contribution in ways beyond reproduction. Because the fact that you're asking these questions proves you're more than just biological function. You're a conscious being trying to understand your place in the universe. He pauses. And because I've seen what happens when societies decide some people are worthless. My own species has a terrible history of determining that certain groups don't deserve to live based on arbitrary criteria. We've learned, slowly and painfully, that every time we've made those judgments, we were wrong. Every time we've decided someone's life doesn't matter, we've diminished ourselves. Myra absorbs this quietly. In my culture, what you did is called wasteful compassion, expending resources on those who cannot contribute to species continuation. It is considered a weakness. Then I'm weak, Owen says simply, and I'm fine with that. Over the following months, Myra begins to rebuild. She finds work at the station's Xenobiology Research Institute, contributing to studies of cross-species medical compatibility. She connects with other exiles and refugees, forming a small community of people who have been discarded by their home societies. And gradually, she starts to believe that perhaps Owen was right, that her worth isn't defined solely by reproductive success, that she can have value through other contributions. 1 year after her asylum request, Myra publishes a groundbreaking paper on Childless reproductive biology that identifies several environmental factors that suppress fertility. Her research suggests that the biological non-fulfillment her society executes people for might be partially caused by societal pressures and environmental stressors that could be addressed. The irony is devastating. She was sentenced to death for a condition her society itself might be causing. Myra's research attracts attention from progressive factions within Childless society who have long questioned the reproductive execution laws. They reach out to her, asking if she'd be willing to testify before a reform commission that's been established to review the policy. It's a risk. Technically, she's still under death sentence in Childless space, though the diplomatic situation makes enforcement complicated. Owen advises caution, but Myra makes her own choice. If my experience can help change this law so others don't face what I faced, then I have to try. This is the contribution I can make, not children, but perhaps prevention of more deaths like mine was supposed to be. With Owen's help, Myra negotiates safe passage guarantees and testifies remotely to the Reform Commission. Her testimony is powerful and personal, describing the psychological impact of being told you deserve death for biological circumstances beyond your control, the despair of internalizing your own worthlessness, the revelation that she could have value through other contributions. She presents her research showing that societal factors contribute to infertility, arguing that executing infertile individuals is not only morally wrong but counterproductive to the species' survival the law allegedly protects. The testimony goes viral across Childless communication networks. Many respond with hostility, accusing her of being a traitor seeking to justify her cowardice. But many others, especially those struggling with fertility issues or those who have lost loved ones to reproductive execution, begin speaking out. The Reform Commission faces pressure from both sides. Conservative factions argue that any relaxation of reproductive obligations will lead to population collapse. Progressive factions argue that the current law is cruel, counterproductive, and based on outdated understanding of fertility biology. After months of debate, the Commission reaches a compromise. The death sentence for biological non-fulfillment is abolished, replaced with mandatory participation in fertility research and alternative service obligations. It's not perfect, it still treats infertility as a legal issue rather than a medical one, but it means people like Myra won't be executed. When the reform is announced, Myra breaks down crying. They won't die, she says through tears. The others like me, they won't die. Owen sits with her, sharing her relief. You did this. Your testimony, your research, you changed the law. You changed me, Myra corrects. Without you, I would have accepted death. I would have believed I deserved it. You showed me that survival was worth fighting for, that I could have value beyond reproduction. Everything that came after started with you refusing to accept that I deserved to die. She meets his eyes with gratitude that transcends words. You saved my life, and then you taught me how to live it. The legal reforms in Childless society are just the beginning. Over the following years, Myra becomes an advocate for reproductive rights and biological autonomy across multiple species. She works with the Interspecies Legal Aid Society, the same organization through which Owen found her, helping others who face persecution for biological circumstances. She and Owen remain close friends, bound by the shared experience of fighting a law that nearly killed her. One evening, 5 years after her asylum request, They're sitting together in an observation deck. Myra reflects on how different her life is from what it was supposed to be. I was meant to die, she says quietly. By my society's law, by my own acceptance. I had made peace with ending, and then you refused to accept it. Because no one truly deserves death for being unable to have children, Owen replies. No one's worth is measured solely by biological function. Myra smiles. You've said that many times, and each time I believe it more. She's quiet for a moment,